We are only 2 games into the season, but I think it's okay to be a bit concerned about Deion Sanders and the Colorado Buffaloes.
You are Locked On Buffs, your daily podcast on the Colorado Buffaloes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Buffs. I am your host, Kevin Borber. Today's episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Go to 5hourenergy.com and use promo code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. We are also brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day for free and available wherever you get your podcast. So make sure to like, subscribe, follow, whatever that method is. Make sure to do it so that way you can stay up to date on all things Colorado, because I think there's a lot of things that are going to be interesting this season. We are 2 games into the season. Colorado's sitting at 1-1 on the year. So my initial projection of them starting off the year 5-0 is taking a hit. And I think we learned a lot about them in their week 2 loss to Nebraska, mostly in the sense of they continue to start slow, which I'm going to get to in the next segment. Their trench play is not as good as we thought it would be. And there's some concerns I have. Let's just dive into one. I think the one that stands out the most right now actually is the way that they're kind of addressing their run game. They had 4 carries for running backs in the first half, and then they had sort of like the gall, I guess, after the game to be like, it wasn't working. And it's like, what wasn't working? You ran the ball 4 times. How would you know if it's working or not? Dallin Hayden was averaging 6 yards a carry, and he only finished the game with, let's see, I think it was 6 carries total. Dallin Hayden, 5 carries for 32 yards, 6.4 yards per carry. The passing game was clearly not working. There was just a lot of flaws with this passing game right now. The defense in the first half, again, let them down, but they made it up. They made it up in the second half. Excuse me. Their second half was phenomenal. Held Nebraska scoreless. Pat Shurmur, I think we all sort of, or not we all, because I know a lot of people were excited about this because he was familiar with Deion Sanders, but his offensive play calling has been uninspiring to me. I think there's been a lot of moments where there's questionable times where we're running the ball on 4th and 1 out of the shotgun. There's questionable throws here, questionable play calls here and there, and I'm just not seeing it from this offense. And when you have a wide receiver core as good as Colorado's, and you have the talent at quarterback that you do, you would think it'd be pretty easy to scheme stuff up. But they're one-dimensional because they have not figured out how to run the ball. And by not being able to run the ball even at all, or not even willing to run the ball, defenses are not worried about. They're not worried about it. They could just drop everyone. Like, it's insane. And so I think there's also a sense of this team's undisciplined again. In week 1, they had penalties. They had 104 yards on 9 penalties in week 1. And then against Nebraska, let me pull up my little notepad here, because they had a lot of penalties, and it's one of those things where it was the same issue last year. It cost them games. There was like the Stanford game was one in particular where I believe it was Travis Hunter that shoved the receiver and gave them a first down when it was like 3rd and 15. There was illegal substitution penalties. So Colorado had 9 penalties for 104 yards. Luckily, Nebraska had 12 for 105, but this isn't a competition to see who could be the most penalized team. That can't happen. Nebraska was able to take advantage of Colorado's mistakes. And now, granted, Colorado could still turn this around. I'm not saying they can't, but combine the offensive coordinating or the offensive play calling combined with the very poor starts, the lack of run game, and then the comments that Shedeur Sanders made. I don't want to act like Shedeur Sanders has made comments like these before, because he hasn't. I've actually praised him quite a bit for last year. I felt like he was really good, at least publicly, for not throwing his team under the bus. And this year, I think we've seen him throw the team under the bus. It was just a weird situation where after the game, they were asked, he was asked a question about the offensive line, and his answer was, "How many times did Raiola touch the ball or get touched?" Excuse me. And that just can't happen. Like that just cannot happen at all. It's literally week 2 into the season. I think there's like this sense of I don't even know. I was shocked to hear him say that because it's like Shedeur Sanders has been a great leader, I think, for last year or the last year and a half or so. And then all of a sudden, he like totally he totally like threw the offensive line under the bus. I'm trying to find the full quote here. So here's the quote. So Coach Prime said protections were a problem, right? And then Shedeur Sanders said, so this was the question. They were asked about the run game and the offensive line. And so Shedeur says, I mean, how many times did Dylan Raiola get touched? Or did Raiola get touched? Of course, when you're able to run the ball consistently, that opens up the pass, but it's just like you've got to understand what your team's good at. Why would we keep running the ball when we get out there and there's a musket situation, we don't get it? Yeah, I think that's on, like, he's not wrong in the sense that they didn't get it, but to totally give up on the run is asinine. And also, it's Charlie Offerdahl. I'm sure he could have a role in this offense. He should not be your 4th and 1 power back. Put in Dallin Hayden, right? Dallin Hayden has shown the ability to break tackles. Dallin Hayden also is a lot bigger than Charlie Offerdahl. And there's nothing against Charlie. Like, it's just Dallin Hayden is 5'10", 205, and Charlie is 5'11", 185. So Charlie's taller, but Dallin has, 285 minus 185. He has 20 pounds on him. And they did it in the first game. They did it in the second game. 4th and 1, try to run it with Charlie, get stuffed, right? And so Shedeur's answer, I didn't like it. I didn't. I think it's one of those things where you just kind of have to figure out a way to be. I mean, I don't know. I don't know the proper way to answer that question. Like, I don't. But it was just so weird to see him sort of blame the offensive line. Like Colorado's last in the Big 12 right now, averaging 1.6 yards per carry, but they're not really giving the running backs a chance. Like, they're not giving the running backs a chance properly. Like, Dallin Hayden should be the starter. Put Michael Welch in the game. We've yet to see him really at all. And it's like a weird situation where it feels like things are boiling over already. And I don't know if it's because Shedeur was sacked 5 times and it felt like it was the same problems last year, which, I mean, it did when you watched it. But for it to be week 2 and for it to have these vibes, because the vibes in Boulder right now, or around Boulder, around the country, not great, right? Everyone's looking at this Colorado team and they're like, well, we're going to wait for this team to fall on their face. This is what Paul Feinbaum said. They're going to fall on their face, and then Deion Sanders is going to look for a way out because his kids and Travis Hunter are gone. Those are the vibes around Colorado right now. That's sort of the energy around the program, at least from the national perspective. And it's worrisome, right? You don't want to be 2 games into your season going, yeah, this season's already over. Like, Colorado has winnable games coming up. They could beat Colorado State. They're favored by 7.5, which, I mean, concerning in of itself. Baylor, beatable. I think UCF is probably beatable. I think UCF is probably a good team, but they're beatable. Arizona hasn't looked that good this year. Their defense has not been able to hold up against New Mexico. They gave up 39, and then Northern Arizona, they kind of took out Tetro McMillan, and all of a sudden things were tough for Arizona. Cincinnati's bad. Texas Tech is bad. There's winnable games on the schedule for Colorado, but if they're unable to sort of learn from their mistakes, move on, and just continue to build each other up, it's going to be a long year. So I think concerns are fair. I wouldn't say this is like the SOS time. Like, we don't need to press the panic button just yet. It's only been 2 games, but I'm not loving what I'm seeing so far. I'm not. You guys comment below. Is it too soon to be a little concerned? Like, on a scale of 1 to 10, I would put my concern level at about a 6 right now, where it's like, I think next week, if they win big, or the next couple weeks they string together some wins, I think that concern level drops a little bit. But if they continue to sort of just have these issues where it's like, okay, we're getting penalized, we're starting slow, we have no run game, Shedeur Sanders isn't getting protected, and then we have game management issues, then I'd be really concerned. But if they win a game and it's like, okay, we're starting to see some solutions, then I'd be like, okay, we're good. But until then, I'm at a 6. You guys comment below, scale of 1 to 10. How concerned are you? When we come back, I'm going to be talking to you about how detrimental Colorado's slow starts are to them as they try to sort of turn the season around. This episode of Locked On Buffs is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Let me tell you about 5 Hour Energy. It fixes tired fast. Whether you have a long list to do for work or a list of DIY projects to tackle at home, take a 5 Hour Energy shot so you can check everything off your list. If you are like me, you always have a large list of projects for the home. When you get your supplies for the project, do not get them. You can't forget, the most essential supply, which is a 5 Hour Energy shot. With zero sugar and a convenient portable size, it's the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. If you go to 5hourenergy.com, and that's the number 5, hourenergy.com, and get some 5 Hour Energy product today, you can use my promo code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. The offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Go to 5hourenergy.com today. Let's talk about it. Colorado continues to start slow, and it is concerning. So, in both games this season, they went into the half losing, right? Against North Dakota State, which they ended up winning, but it was close. They went into the half losing 20-17. Now, they obviously came back. The defense played phenomenally. That game was close, though, and the offense didn't lay an egg. The offense laid an egg against Nebraska. It is what it is. I mean, it was just so bad. There was nothing that they could have done. There's a really telling stat about this offense, and a lot of people are blaming the offense line, which they didn't play well. But I mean, the offense line was the problem. But it's too easy to figure out how to stop this offense, right? If you could get pressure on Shedeur Sanders, you will probably win the game. So Shedeur Sanders was pressured on 22 dropbacks versus Nebraska, and he went 5 of 15 for 45 yards, 1 touchdown, 5 sacks, and he had a QBR of 1.8. On those 19 of those 22 plays, Nebraska was only bringing 3 or 4 people. So Colorado, they're dropping everyone, right? So what does this mean? Well, Colorado needs to figure out a way to move the ball down the field without sort of having to rely on the deep shots. They need to figure out how to dominate in their intermediate and short game, and they're not doing that. And we see it. And how does this affect slow starts? Well, you just look at how their first few drives went against Nebraska. It was atrocious. 3 and out, punt, turnover on downs, pick 6, punt, right? You look at Colorado's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, first 4 drives, or we could go first 5. They had 7 plays, 8 plays, 11. And this is me totaling it up as I go. 17. In Nebraska's first 3 drives, they went 7, 4, 9. Nebraska had more plays in their very first 3 drives than Colorado had in their very first 5. Colorado, like I said, starting off with a punt, turnover, pick 6, punt, missed field goal. Mata missed an opportunity to get them on the board. Punt again, missed field goal again. I mean, that just can't happen. You have 8 drives in the first half. None of them ended with points. And meanwhile, Nebraska, they put up 28 points in the first half. That can't happen. And you guys got all upset when I said Colorado needs to have a near perfect showing from their offense because their defense is not able to sort of be a strength just yet. The defense can make adjustments. But again, making adjustments after the damage is done is like putting tape on a broken arm. It's like, or a Band-Aid on a broken arm. It's like, okay, there's protection. Obviously, I'm being a little facetious here, but the defense did well in the second half. I'm not going to lie to you. But the slow starts are killing Colorado. And so I went back and I looked up how many games or what their record was, what their record was when they went into the when they went into halftime losing. Dating back to last season, they are 3-9 when they lose or when they are down at half. Their 3 wins, North Dakota State, FCS team, which I mean, very good, but still an FCS team. Arizona State, very bad team last year. And then Colorado State, group of 5 team that they needed to double overtime to beat. So luckily for Colorado, those 3 teams just weren't able to sustain their leads. But when teams can sustain their leads, 9 losses. So Colorado needs to figure out a way to get on the board early. They do, because it's one of those things where you have to get on the board early and you need to sort of mask the defense's flaws, because clearly they're going to have first half flaws. Otherwise, it's going to be a long game. And so I don't really know what the change needs to be. I don't. I'm going to we'll look at the play calling. First drive against Nebraska, incomplete pass, sack. And then we'll go look at North Dakota State and we'll see if there's any similarities in these first drives. Actually, Colorado scored 2 touchdowns early, but after they scored their second touchdown, North Dakota State was able to put up a touchdown and a field goal before Colorado could. And so on these drives where they start slow, it's one of those things where I don't know if it's the play calling specifically. Like, let's just say Colorado's offense is very predictable, okay? And when a team like Nebraska has a really good defense and they can get pressure with 3 or 4, they take away the passing game from Shedeur Sanders. I think that was the worst game I've seen Shedeur Sanders play, maybe of his entire career. This game felt worse than the Oregon game from a Shedeur Sanders perspective, which may seem extreme, but he just was not his same self. Like the pick 6, obviously there was it looked like a miscommunication there. That was a very ill-advised throw. Like that throw was about as just, we're going to hope for the best. It just wasn't good. I expect a lot from Shedeur, and it's probably unfair for me to expect him to ball out every play. But Colorado, Nebraska took away the middle to deep intermediate game, or middle to deep game from Shedeur Sanders, right? Like if you look at his completion percentage, he was on deep passes from 10 to 20 yards. He ended up being 6 of 11, which is 54%. On passes of 20 yards plus, he was 40%, excuse me. He was 2 of 5. And they were just making him take what they were giving him. And they were keeping everything in front. And guys, I mean, that's a lot of pressure, but they just weren't able to make get these big runs or whatever. And so Colorado needs to figure out a way to where teams are going to drop 9 or drop 8, whatever. They're going to drop everyone until you show you could run the ball. And I know Coach Prime says not every team has a great run game and a great passing game. And he's right. They don't. But I would say 97% of teams outside of like the air raid teams or outside of the military academies who don't throw the ball, 97% of teams have some sort of effort to be balanced. And Colorado makes no effort, and then it ends up biting them in the butt. So if they want to win games, if they want to turn this around, they need to figure out a way to establish the run early, or figure out a way for there to be big plays made on offense to sort of combat everyone dropping. Because it happens. Everyone's going to do it. Like everyone's going to look at this Nebraska game and be like, this is how you shut down Shedeur Sanders. This is how you limit Travis Hunter. This is how you beat Colorado. And if they're not able to fix this, like Pat Shurmur, it's kind of on him right now because he's the one with the playbook. Like if he's unable to fix this, it's going to be a long year. But if he is able to fix this, the sky is the limit for this offense. So it'll be really interesting to see what kind of adjustments they make moving forward. When we come back, I'm going to talk a little bit more about Colorado State. This episode of Locked on Buffs is brought to you by Ibotta. Sandals, sunscreen, snacks for the kids. What do these have in common? You're probably buying a ton again this summer, but don't stress about the cost. Use Ibotta and get cash back on all your purchases when you stock up on all of your summer essentials. Ibotta is a free app that lets you earn cash back every time you shop. Earn on hundreds of items from groceries to beauty supplies, even toys, so you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. Right now, Ibotta is offering listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta by using the code LOCKEDONCollege when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app to start earning cash back and use code LOCKEDONCollege. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store and use code LOCKEDONCollege. Welcome back to Locked On Buffs. Appreciate you guys for tuning in on another fun Monday episode. Let's dive into the issues or the Colorado State game so far, I guess. There's not really issues because, the game hasn't played, but let's just talk about it. Colorado State is only a 7.5 point dog. And what does this tell me? This tells me that the odds makers, they think Colorado sucks, right? I think Colorado State, realistically, Colorado should have been like at least a 2-score favorite against them if things were going right, but that's not the case. So let's look at what Colorado State has done in their first 2 games. Game number 1, they got blown out, 52-0. It was an abysmal game for them. Texas took away the pass. They had 74 yards passing with 2 interceptions. Week 2 against Northern Colorado, they won 38-17. And their passing game was solid, 18-27 for Braden Fowler and Nicolsi, 202 yards and a score. But it was their run game that really, I think, made the difference. 39 carries for 224 yards and 3 touchdowns. And then their defense, they didn't get much from the defense in terms of like sacks, or they didn't force any turnovers, but they played well enough. And so if you're Colorado, you think of how this team attacked you last year, over the middle. So the same way everyone's attacking you this year. Figure out a way to stop that. If you're Colorado, what happened last year that sort of gave Colorado State the confidence? Well, you started really slow, right? You were able to win this game, but you started really slow. Colorado State went into the halftime leading, and it was just one of those things where it was a little scary, especially after Travis Hunter went down. So for Colorado to beat Colorado State, they need a better start. Try to establish the run. I don't understand why they aren't trying to do it, but this would be the team to do it against. Texas ran the ball 41 times for 190 yards against Colorado State. Just give the ball to Dallin Hayden. Give the ball to Isaiah Gustav, Michael Welch. Throw in Charlie Offerdahl if you want him in there that badly. Figure out a way for this to work. Figure out what looks work, what plays work, maybe like a pitch to the outside. I don't care. Get things going, because this is a statement game for Colorado. If this game's close, I think a lot of people are going to be like, okay, this Colorado team's fraudulent. Like, that's just how it's going to be. Is it fair? I don't know. But that's just how it's going to be. If Colorado is not able to win this game convincingly, they will be viewed as fraudulent. And I think a lot of people already view them that way. And I think a lot of people, it would be hard to convince them otherwise if they're unable to sort of show how far they've come. And then if they lose this game, all hell is going to break loose. So Colorado needs to make a statement here. They need to get pressure on the quarterback. They haven't done that at all this year. They need to stop the run. They need to be better in the trenches. They looked worse yesterday than they did in week 1. This is another team where, similar to North Dakota State, I think North Dakota State would probably beat Colorado State, if I'm being honest. So Colorado should have no issue with them, you would think, but we're just going to have to wait and find out. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow. This has been another episode of Locked On Buffs. We're going to have Scott Proctor on tomorrow, as we do every Tuesday, and it's going to be a real fun one to discuss and digest, and we're going to talk about all things Nebraska, all things Colorado State, so make sure to tune in. Thank you guys for tuning in.